Yeah, I have noticed that in the secular countries, there isn't really anything that binds people. People aren't going to come together on a Sunday and talk about evolution, and have like a evolution-based community center. It's always faith that actually binds people and that creates this sense of community. And in the secular societies, people that don't even really know who they are at all, which sounds like a bit of a woo-woo thing to say, but a few hundred years ago, if you went and asked someone, "Who are you?" you'd be like, "I'm Andrew Wilson. I'm third of my name. I'm from here, and this is my responsibility. This is my extended family. This is my land where I'm from." But now you'd ask them, you'd say, "Who are you?" I'm Jake, and I've got a cool YouTube channel, and we don't really have that connection to tradition or to
Well,
community
haven't you
anymore.
been taught that you're just a grain of sand, in the infinite universe of you're just a speck, you know what I mean? You're just a speck of dust, a nothing. Ultimately, you're a biological mistake. Life
Mm.
itself is just an aberration. It's like, yeah, these are things which give people no purpose. And community destruction has been the head of the progressive agenda since there's been a progressive agenda. The dismantling of the family is the kind of the primary concern. And you can see it even now. Anytime I do debates with secularists, what do they always make more demands for? Let's destroy this idea of a cross-generational or nuclear family. That's the most important thing seemingly to them. They fucking hate it. They hate not being able to promote any form of alternative to that. So yeah, I do think community makes a huge difference and has always made a huge difference, and that's destroyed. And as the church continues to get destroyed and the various churches get destroyed as a town square, you're just going to see more of that, not less.
I'm trying to find this clip of this atheist church that I once saw, which was really funny. I can't remember where exactly I saw it. But anyways, I'll find it another time. But it was just funny because these people resorted to almost a factory setting of coming together in a church, but they're like, "Oh well, we don't believe in God, but we are going to get together and we're going to have pews and we're going to sing together and everything."
Yeah, that's a good point that Batman brings up. It's easier to break your spirit if you don't have anyone. It's true. That's the other part of a sense of community that people forget about, is that it offers you huge protections.
Mm.
Like having your family there if you screw up, to kind of cuff you and talk a little bit of smack, you know what I mean, and correct your behavior, while at the same time not allowing you to have to feel the kind of full repercussions of it, creates a sense of gratefulness, doesn't it? Like how
Yeah.
many times has it been when you fucked up around your brothers, right? And they've protected you from the full extent of the fuck up while still explaining to you that this is a fuck up and you're not allowed to do this anymore.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. Heaps of
Constantly,
times.
right?
Heaps of
So,
times. Yeah.
how does that not create a sense of complete gratefulness to the people around you?
Yeah, especially with hindsight, man. You get hindsight is amazing like that, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
I also think that there's something to do with, and you might be able to help me develop this thought, but there's something to do with urbanization and the sort of the fact that we sort of cram into these little cities more and more these days. Like I was reading Russell Kirk, what's his book called? The Conservative Mind. And he has this great quote where it says something along the lines of, uh, God exists out in the countries, or like tradition really exists out in the countryside because it's very difficult to remove a man from the God above his head and the his father buried below his feet, if you know what I mean. So
Mhm.
in that sort of traditional space, and that's where tradition really exists, and it doesn't really exist in the city because we don't have anything that we really like. We don't really have anything that we're sort of so attached and drawn to. It's very sort of one bedroom apartment, materialistic. We come and we go, we move every year, and this sort of thing.
Well, it also eliminates the idea of any sort of interpersonal dependency, right? Like, it's very common. I think I've talked about this before, and people in the chat who've lived out in the country probably understand this pretty well. It's not actually uncommon if you live 30 minutes away, 40 minutes away, or an hour away from civilization. If you have friends who are around you and they're heading into town, to go to the grocery store or something like that, it's not uncommon for them to just stop by and be like, "Hey, man, what do you need?"
Mm.
There's no sense in us making two trips. Or, "Hey, instead of going to the hardware store, I have this in the back. You can get me with something later." You know what I mean? Things like this. It creates a kind of a sense of a community this way, where it's not that you're necessarily dependent on the other people, right? But for the sake of both convenience and for mutual aid, it's a really good idea to keep up good relations with people, which also means that there's a sense of culture there you're not allowed to violate, right?
So true,
If
man.
you're a piece of shit scumbag and you're breaking into houses and you're a junkie and this and that, people ain't going to stop by your house to ask you if you need anything from the store, right? So
So true.
that's just the way it works.
Yeah, like I don't know anybody who lives in my apartment building. Maybe one or two. I try to introduce myself, but when we go out to the country and we go like hunting, for example, everybody on the whole entire strip for kilometers and kilometers, they all know each other and they all let each other use their land for hunting. And you can sort of, it's this sort of unwritten agreement that everybody's got. You'll let each other use each other's land, and but over here, it's like nobody really knows each other in the city. You're so much closer, but you actually are so much further apart.
There was a time, I remember there's a guy around my area. Um, he has one of the biggest spreads of property around. He's a farmer, and he took one of the massive fields he had and just turned it into basically a hunting preserve for everybody, right? Almost
Mm.
everybody flocks to this. It's like 700 acres. It's huge. Okay. And they hunt, and it's totally free. He doesn't say anything, but he had a rule for a long time. There was a deer that would always drop twin fawns every year, drop twin fawns. And he was always like, look, you guys can, have at it with the bucks and have at it with with the doe, but here's the specific doe, here's the markings. You don't shoot her, she drops twin fawns, right? That was kind of his rule. And it became kind of like this taboo thing. People would always go, hey, and they would joke around with him and be like, hey, when I go out there, you know what I mean, they're going to be twins next year, and we would all laugh about it and this type of thing. But I got a feeling that if somebody actually shot that doe, you know what I mean? Who drop those twin fawns every year? I bet you the community would just kick the shit out of that guy. Kick the shit
Mm.
because, but even that created a sense of community around it. You know what I mean? Like everybody knows you just don't do this one thing. And that's kind of how social hierarchies are formed. It's around kind of silly things like this, which become entrenched in the culture.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting when I look at it these days. Like, I definitely want to live in the country when I have a family, have a farm, get out of the city for sure. I mean, I'm not in the city at the moment. I'm in a coastal town, but still. But, anyways, uh, I see this a lot actually of people wanting to get out of the cities these days, especially now that people can actually work remotely. So, do you reckon this is, and the real estate's going to be cheaper if you can work from home or from your computer? There's absolutely no point in going and cramming yourself in a stinky apartment.
Well, I think that the issue starts way earlier than that. So I don't even think it's technology as much as people do. When I was a kid, and you'll never have this experience because you're too young. But when I was a kid, you didn't go into the suburbs without there being kids everywhere, wall to wall. They were skating, they were skateboarding, they were playing street hockey, they were playing basketball. They were all over the street. When you drove through the suburbs when I was a kid, you had to go slow because there was and this would people would say this out loud, right? They'd be like, a kid can just pop out of nowhere. And they would. They'd
Mm,
pop out from behind parked cars and shit. You know what I mean? They were everywhere. And now the streets are completely vacant. You
mm.
can go speeding through the suburbs and you're basically all right. There's no kids anywhere. It is bizarre. It's
Yeah, it
like
is.
being a person who knows what clouds are, and you go to like a new planet where you look at the sky and there's never any clouds.
Mm.
How do you explain that to people? That it's gone. It's totally gone. And so what part of having all those kids around, that assisted with socialization. That really helped with socialization and people being able to form community bonds and things like that. Kids were doing it with each other. And now that that's gone, and people are, kids especially, are relying on the internet and things like this, they actually don't even have communication skills. They don't know how to
Yeah, dude.
communicate. They don't know how to
Yeah.
talk. They don't know how to have social skills. They don't know anything about intersexual dynamics. It's a
Mm.
mess. And that's
Yeah,
one of the
man.
things that the antinatalists ruined more than anything. They destroyed the socialization skills of an entire generation.
And it's crazy when you see how fragile they actually are in terms of that at that age and how malleable they are. Because I had a family friend who, during COVID, she was very much like, oh, wear the mask, wear the mask. And she was wearing a mask and she had a newborn son and she was a single mother. And the kid is like nearly retired now because he couldn't see her face um, when she was like trying to teach him lessons. And
Hmm.
the kid's got all these problems now because he couldn't see the expression of his mother's face and it was just the two of them because they were in
Yeah.
lockdowns.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
wild, man. Like it used to be, Jake. if you lived in the suburbs and you were a kid, you could hear the whole neighborhood was always loud because of kids playing. You'd always hear like random screams, kids playing. That's how you knew it was time to go outside, right? Oh, there's
Mm.
kids outside. I can hear them, right? And it's gone. It's like a desolate wasteland. It's so bizarre to me. But I've gone through now, hundreds of suburbs, driven through hundreds of them, in my 40s now, and there's just nothing. There's nothing like that, and it's bizarre to me. What the big shame is, like, you'll never have experienced that, and that's what made socialization so much better, I think, for millennials, at least at my age, was that they still had that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I caught the back end of it. There was nothing like that with the kids everywhere screaming, but I spent my whole childhood outdoors, rollerblading, skateboarding, hanging out with the neighborhood kids and everything. But then I think my generation was like sort of the last of it because I'm like, what, 11 years younger than you, 12 years younger than you.
Hmm.
So just the end of it. But nowadays it's like they are on like iPads and shit all the time. I've seen kids who just are completely, it's impossible to actually remove them from their iPad, which is just so crazy that they're getting raised by that thing.
Well, Andrew,
Yeah.
have you
I
also
mean,
noticed
my
too that there's a
people's parents
way?
used to bitch about it. I wish these kids would sleep in. Right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
shit. And like, that was it. It was always the same. It was always the same routine. The morning cartoons are done at 10 o'clock, and you better be outside. I mean, that was how
mm.
it was, and then it's just gone. But anyway, what were you saying, Mystery?
Have you also noticed that there's like a drastic reduction in the amount of kids walking around with like casts and stuff in the summer?
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
Like,
yeah,
there's
for
nobody
sure.
gets hurt. None of these kids get hurt anymore. They're not like out doing things. They're not breaking arms and stuff like that.
Well, they're
And
not building ramps in the street. We used to
yeah,
build ramps in the street. We used to play street hockey. We used to do all kinds of shit,
well,
and it's all gone.
it used to be a punishment to be stuck inside in your room, and
Yep.
now, like, I can't imagine that would be a punishment for a modern kid. Oh, you're not allowed outside, right?
Yeah, yeah, like they go out there anyway.
Yeah, like they're
Yeah, so I mean, that's a big part of the socialization. People blame urban sprawls, but we've always had urban sprawls, and they blame telecommunications. But look, in the 1980s and the 1990s, women would spend 12 hours on the phone, dude. They would
Mm.
literally have they would take the phone over in the house for hours and hours calling their friends and talking about bullshit. It's not telecommunications that's done this either. There's just no kids. There's nobody to socialize with. And when you
Yeah,
do, it's
man.
in a completely sterile environment of a public school, which is run by a bunch of stupid ass women teaching them a bunch of liberal bullshit.
Mhm.
Yeah. Scary future. But, you can always get a bunch of like-minded people and move out to the country and recreate it.
Well, they're trying, but there used to be more urban incentives to move out to the country. There used to be all kinds of grants and stipends that people could get. If they got rural land, they would get, in some cases, no down, or the government would take care of the down because they wanted those places populated. That way, there was more, people had enough room to live, and what the whole goal was that the country areas would get built up slowly over time with people kind of removing themselves from the big cities, which would allow the localized kind of farmstead economies to thrive. And they took all those incentives away, especially Democrats. Democrats hate people live in the country.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton called it, flyover country, the basket of deplorables.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She's
Yeah.
talking about people don't live in urban cities, and they've been trying to take away all incentives for years and years and years.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. In Australia, with all of the country towns now, the ones because I went to a boarding school, which means you live at the school. I don't know if you guys have that in America, but you live at the school for my last years of high school, and all of the country. It was in a country town, and then all of the country towns around it, they just had huge problems with ice, which is like meth. They have huge meth problems all throughout Australia. It's like an epidemic in Australia with basically all of the youth being meth addicted, and these towns that used to be thriving economies and everything are now just like wastelands.
Do you know that sometimes, you know how they would kill a lot of rural towns? They would
Yeah.
wall off the off ramp. So a lot of towns, what used to happen is they'd have a gas station right off the off ramp on the highway. Okay.
Mm.
And then when you went to the off ramp, they would have wayfinding signs. Come visit our our downtown area, you
Yep.
know, we have a lot of history here. Visit our, you know, small farm museum, things like this. And people who would go on the off ramp, take a leak, would go, oh, we'll go check that out. Now, not a lot of people, but if you have, you know, thousands of people daily getting off on an off ramp to go to a gas station, that's going to drive your economy in your little downtown shopping areas and things like that in small farm towns. They started walling those overpasses off, literally walling them off. And Walmart, in fact, wanted to contribute to some of that, move overpasses in different areas and things like this to kill the rural countryside communities.
Mm.
Like, yeah, the whole thing is fucked from the top down, man.
Yeah.